Wow, I love the energy in the room. Matlab, I have never seen such energy in any conference ever. So amazing work, Hitesh, for whatever he did. And, all of the excitement and, better than normal and all of that was amazing. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming down here in the morning. I know Delhi NCR is not a very early morning crowd. So our 10:30 always starts at 11. So it's really exciting to have everyone here. My name is Smiti. I'm one of the founders of Advantage Club, and which is typically a global employee engagement, rewards recognition, overall community building platform. So today I'm going to talk about how do we build a better employee experience, especially when we're considering the new normal, where we have hybrid work setups, we have remote working, we have working from office. So how do we actually manage that in the right manner? And over the next 20 minutes, I'm going to talk about that. So typically from an employee experience perspective, what a great employee experience does is that it engages employees. It adds meaning to what they're actually doing. It creates a sense of purpose and makes their work more fulfilling at the workplace. So what is exactly employee experience and how is it different from employee engagement? And people usually confuse the two words a lot. Engagement is just a part of experience. It is not the heart and soul of experience. While engagement helps drive productivity, there are 5 more factors which add to experience, and hence, relationship between productivity and experience is actually 6 times higher than relationship between just engagement and productivity. So beyond engagement, the other 5 pieces which help build a better employee experience are: 1, how authentic I feel my organization is. Second, do I have a purpose associated with my work? Do I feel my organization is purpose-led and my objectives and KRAs are actually coinciding with that? Third, do I feel optimistic every time I'm in the organization? Fourth, do I feel a social connection with all of my peers, all of my managers, my colleagues, my leaders in the organization? And fifth is, of course, engagement. And sixth being belongingness, how I feel about my organization, how close I feel to them, and how, my thought processes every time I go to work. So let's first talk about authenticity. I'm going to talk about all 6 pieces today and give you a quick idea around how we can build a better experience for employees. So what is authenticity per se? Authenticity is a thought process more than anything else. As an employee, I have a certain psyche towards my organization. I feel that my company is authentic or it's not. How does that happen? The first is visual aspect of the organization itself. When I walk in an office or when I join my company, I see things around me and I see how people are, how they're behaving, what's the culture of the company, and that creates a visual authenticity towards my organization. The second is conversational. I also talk to people around me. I see how they feel about the company itself. If everyone in the organization is negative towards a certain aspect of the company, my ideology also gets influenced accordingly because I also feel that, okay, if 20 people are saying it, it's probably right. And the third piece is experiential, which adds to authenticity of the organization. Now, I see, I hear, or I talk, and I truly believe. So my belief actually comes from how I experience every day in my company when I join to when I leave. So true authentic engagement is actually a cusp of all of the 3, where you're able to give a better visual experience, a better conversational experience, and also get a better personalized experience for the employee when they're actually spending their entire life cycle with your organization. The second is purpose and meaning, and I cannot emphasize enough on how important it is to drive a purpose-led work role for every employee. So typically from a purpose perspective, if as an organization we understand what employees do and why they are doing it, at the same time making them actually focus beyond just results. I mean, all of us want results, and that's like the most obvious reason why organizations are built in the first place. But because everybody is focusing on results, what is your organization doing differently, which is focused beyond just the result aspect of it? Are you actually creating communities? Are you creating a sense of belongingness for employees? Or how are you actually making every moment which matters in an employee's life count? The second is primarily driving appreciation or driving recognition where recognition is due. That eventually adds to better meaning, because when I'm doing something and I do a good job about it, if there is a certain recognition or credit associated with it, I automatically feel that, okay, what I'm doing matters. My work actually has meaning in this organization. Third is, again, another thing which drives purpose and meaning while working in any company is promoting teamwork, creating groups, creating communities where people can interact with each other and learn more from each other. The third piece which helps drive better employee experience is optimism. Now, optimism I've split across three parts. First is optimism during crisis situations, which is what we call as resilience. And we've all seen examples of resilience during COVID. I mean, most of us, whoever has survived because of the resilience of the organization. And I wouldn't call it resilience of the organization. I mean, what is an organization? It is a set of people who are running a structure, an institution, right? So it's really the resilience of the employees. It's the resilience of the managers, the leadership, everybody coming together and figuring out, okay, we have to immediately, overnight, move from a work from office to work from home experience. How resilient are we to do that? Can we actually provide the right support to our employees? Are we, as we're moving beyond the pandemic, are we able to create structures in which not only are we using technology to help us move forward, at the same time, we're also letting employees not feel that, okay, they're disconnected from the company today. So resilience is basically optimism during crisis. Mindfulness is optimism during regular life. Now, a regular day-to-day work is not basically that mundane or that happy that you always go home happy, right? So it's a roller coaster kind of a setup every day, and there are high points, there are low points, and how do you enable employees to be mindful during that time? Are you focused on mental health? Are you focused on emotional intelligence? Are you also creating structures in which people are having a better work-life balance? That overall helps drive a better optimism, especially in terms of mindfulness for employees. Third is openness. The more open your culture is, the more optimistic your employees will become. By openness, I mean, one, transparency in terms of different teams, in terms of leadership, in terms of managers interacting with their peers, even in terms of how open my peers are to me with each other. Am I getting the right feedback to improve? Am I getting the right credit where it's due? Am I actually, do I feel that this organization is, actually open towards me and is telling me what is the real deal instead of just hushing it up among the leadership? The fourth is social connections, and while we all know what social connections are, I'm not going to dive into the definition of social connections, but I'm going to also talk about this, like one of my favorite slides. I always put it up in all of my presentations, which primarily talks about how the world was pre-pandemic and how the world is post-pandemic now. So pre-pandemic 2019, as you can see, 8%, only 8% of people were actually exclusively remote as per Gallup's reports. And 60% were fully on-site, but interestingly, 32% was still hybrid at that point in time. Now, 2022 and beyond, what has happened now is that almost 53% has become hybrid. So your fully on-site kind of setup has almost moved to a fully hybrid setup. And your exclusively remote setup, if you're looking at 2023 and beyond, especially in terms of preferred locations, that exclusively remote setup pre-pandemic has actually become fully on-site. So you see that entire shift, right? Everything has flipped within the past couple of years, where everyone who was working from office is now working from home, and maybe the set of people who are actually working from home are now working from office. So what that essentially does is it definitely creates a gap in how employees are able to interact with each other. Now, in a standard work setup, I go to office, I talk to 20 people, I have water cooler chats, I have meetings, I interact with people, I have lunches or maybe smoke breaks or whatever. So I speak to so many people, and thereby I feel more connected towards my colleagues in my organization. In a remote or a hybrid setup, I'm sitting behind a laptop. There are kids screaming in my background. There is, my spouse or my in-laws asking me 20,000 things. There's home stuff, and all of that creates a disconnect from the way you're looking at your work as well. So how do you help employees balance that? So typically, again, here, technology can help. To build stronger social connections, you have to use technology as an enabler where you can build digital communities. You can create setups in which employees can interact with each other, peer appreciations, games, or any sort of activities which you were driving physically earlier. Now you can digitize that whole piece, and there's so many tools available in the market which can help you do that. Now, next is employee engagement, and this is such a vast topic. You could do like another 20 minutes just on engagement, but I'm going to spend the next 1 minute talking about it. Engagement can primarily be driven by 5 primary objectives. The first thing is, if you want to drive a better engagement, one, you need to associate all your engagement programs with the goals and objectives of the organization and of the employee altogether. If an employee clearly understands what is my goal, what is my KRA, what am I supposed to do here, and what actually is the right, what is the right set of association with my results than what I'm doing, that drives goals and objectives and therefore drives higher engagement because I exactly know what I'm supposed to do. Second is career development. If as an employee, I don't feel that I have any career evolution in this company, then obviously I will get disengaged. Third is leadership. And leadership is, and all of us out here, everyone out here who's sitting, most of you are leaders, your connections with the ground staff, with the, even the freshers or even the mid-level people, that really helps in driving higher employee engagement. And the other day, me and our CHRO were chatting about how if, say, a CEO of a company or a CXO of a company just randomly chats up to somebody who's mid-level or junior in the organization, that becomes a story which people tell for years and years and years to come. Like I remember when we had just graduated out of college and one of my friends, she had joined Infosys, and she's a little weird, but anyway, what she was doing is she was having lunch, and Sudha Murthy just walks up to her, and she just sits with her and has a cup of coffee. And ironically, my friend didn't know who Sudha Murthy was, so everyone around her was staring at her, and she was just normally talking to her. And then when Sudha actually walked up and went away, all of my friends' colleagues, they came to her and they were like, "Did you even know who she was?" She's like, "No." And she's, "That was Sudha Murthy." And this became a story she tells even till today. This is like 10, 15 years later. So the more leaders are involved in talking to people or interacting with everybody in the organization, it drives higher engagement and kind of brands Infosys as a great employer that, the CXOs are just talking to people. There's an open and available to everybody else. The fourth is stress, balance, and workload. Now, when we're talking about stress, balance, and workload, it does not necessarily mean that people are having a lot of work. It also could mean that you have underhired and there is a lot of overwork which is happening because of that. So identifying the right kind of stress, and stress can be either work-related, it could also be culture-related. You might not have a lot of work, but the culture has become so pressurizing in a way that even though people are not having that kind of a stress, it's not because of the workload, it is because of the culture. Fifth is, of course, recognition. When I'm doing a great job, I feel I need to be, I deserve to be credited for it. We've all done those interviews where people are just leaving their jobs, not because they're not doing well. They're doing well, but they feel that their recognition is not enough. They don't feel, that they're actually getting appreciated for their efforts. And then they feel that, okay, there's internal politics and people are jumping over each other. There's no value of whatever you do in this company. So recognition, especially recognition in public, is really, really important for people to feel that they're doing a good job, at the same time more engaged with the company. The last piece is belongingness, and again, this is a vast topic, so I've split it across two slides. Belongingness can be driven both via managers and via peers. So let's first talk about managers. How can my manager make me feel that I belong more to the organization? I feel more belonged to the company, one, if my manager recognizes my work, tells me I did a good job when I did a good job. Second, if I didn't do a good job, gives me feedback to improve. And one of the interesting things we have to look at here is you should always recognize in public, you should always criticize in private. Most of us, in our anger, end up doing exactly the opposite. But the more you follow this mantra, the better engagement will be driven in your organization. Third, if my manager responds to my concerns, if I need help, gives me the right set of help. And fourth, my manager also empowers my team members to help me because, let's face it, my manager might not know everything or might not be available for me all the time. So as a good manager, I can actually empower other people as mentors or as peers who can help me and put that message across that if your teams need help, help them out. In terms of peers, how is belongingness driven? So I feel more belong to the organization if, first, my peers connect with me in work and not only just at work, outside work. So the more I hang out with my peers, the more I connect with them, the lesser I'm inclined to leave the organization because I'm not just leaving my company, then I'm leaving the group of amazing friends I've made out here. And I typically don't want to go into a random setup where I don't know what kind of people would be there. So until unless things are completely falling apart, I will not leave that organization. Belongingness is also driven by peers if they give me timely and honest peer feedback. And what is interesting about peer feedback is it's very different than manager feedback. If my manager gives me feedback, I might get pressurized, I might get scared. I think, why am I getting this negative feedback? Am I going to lose my job? Am I going to have a lesser appraisal? Is this going to affect my overall growth in the company? But if my peer gives me a feedback, it gives a different thought process. It makes me feel grateful towards my peer. It makes me feel that, okay, if this person's saying it, that might be right. But at the end of the day, the peer does not have any control over my growth in the company. So peer feedback is taken more optimistically, and hence it becomes a really important factor when you're trying to set the right message across at the same time drive higher engagement. Third, if my peers appreciate my work and are grateful to me for my help as well, that also helps drive higher belongingness in my organization. So all of this boils down to one single mantra, that you have to keep your employees first. When we make policies, when we make any sort of engagement programs, we always start off with two things. One, how is this going to make my life easier? In terms of processes, in terms of driving things, is this going to reduce my work in general? Second, is this going to make my leader happy, right? So these two are important metrics. I'm not saying they're bad metrics, but the first and foremost important metric should be that you start with the employee. Any program you create, any solution you create, it needs to start with keeping employees at the first place itself. And when you keep an employee in the beginning, automatically your diversity, equity, inclusion, everything comes in one place because you're starting with the employee. So you start thinking about these things and you start devising programs which match the goals and objectives of the organization too. In terms of celebrations, again, when we talk about an employee life cycle, an employee's entire life cycle is divided in different moments, right? So I join the organization, it's my first day, it's a great moment for me. Then maybe I do a good job, I get promoted. Again, it's a huge day for me. Third, I complete maybe my first year or my 5 years or my 10 years in the organization. So that anniversary is again a very major milestone for me. I get recognized for my efforts, huge moment for me. And of course, and I know we don't talk about it, but my last day is also a very, very important day for me as an employee. It's primarily a day which will decide whether, I speak good about my organization when I leave it or whether I speak bad about my organization when I leave it. So every moment which happens in an employee life cycle needs to be recognized, needs to be celebrated, and that's how you drive a better employee experience in general. So to build a future-ready workforce, there are literally 7 things which we need to do. 1, your organization needs to be purpose-driven. Second, leadership need to be most involved as they can be. Third, technology needs to be deployed. We're in a hybrid work setup. Just having a mundane setup without technology adoption will not work in the long run. Fourth, social connections need to be built among people so that they feel more connected to each other and hence more engaged. Fifth, in terms of strategy, the strategy of what an employee is doing versus what the organization needs need to match with each other, and an employee needs to know how my work is going to lead to the growth of the organization eventually. Sixth is physical infra, and I'm not saying physical infra in terms of a fancy office. Physical infra could simply mean that if you're doing a hybrid work setup, do even people have laptops at home? Do they even have a setup in which they can do work from home? If you are saying that you are driving diversity, equity, inclusion, do you have ability for the disabled? So all of those actually attach to physical infra, thereby driving a better experience. And lastly, of course, recognize people, celebrate people, engage with them, and overall become a more future-ready organization. Thank you so much for listening to me today. And like I said, my name is Smiti. I'm the founder of Advantage Club. We have a booth right outside. So if you need to just chat about engagement programs, again, we're not going to sell you anything. You can just come and chat. Would love to discuss what you're doing in terms of engaging employees, driving recognition, maybe creating communities or building that great culture. And would love to share 2 cents from my end of what I've seen great organizations do as well. Thank you so much for your time.